Nope, let's get this over with. I got shit to do today.
If you were hoping that Captain America Brave New World would be the movie to revive the rotting MCU corpse, well, then you're going to be very disappointed. This clunky, hacked to pieces, bloated mess of a movie is a lot of things, but two things it is not is brave or new. This final version of the film, I guess it's the third or fourth iteration of the film now, tried to retread a lot of the same story beats from The Winter Soldier. Only it didn't do it nearly as well, and being such a literal edited together hack job isn't nearly as focused as its predecessor. Whereas The Winter Soldier veered from the typical Marvel quippiness to tell a more serious toned espionage story, Brave New World wildly swings between being overly serious and then right back to being overly silly. It's incredibly jarring and immersion breaking. Apart from the unfocused rehashing of a superior movie, it also brings back the celestial corpse from the Eternals. Does anyone even remember that movie, or the country-sized celestial corpse? Turns out that corpse is filled with adamantium. Yeah, the Wolverine metal. Now that Disney bought out Fox, they might as well start mining the X-Men franchise. In this case, quite literally. This is a movie that had multiple reshoots and re-edits to try and please the current regime and Disney ideological beliefs at the time, as the political landscape shifted under its feet. And every time it shifted, this movie tried to somehow course-correct its narrative and things got more and more out of hand. Some characters barely show up, to disappear without a trace, main villains come and go, story threads are started and then just left dangling, and both endings were incredibly disappointing. Both endings, you ask? Yep, we have a main villain and we also have the Red Hulk endings. I'll get to those, don't you worry. Sam Wilson as the Falcon was a great character. Sam Wilson as Captain America is not. Sam is still an honorable man and he strives to keep doing the right thing, but this version of him just seems off. Disney went out of its way to tell the world how hard it is to be a black man and Captain America in the Falcon and Winter Soldier series. Instead of keeping the character of Captain America a symbol of hope and national pride, they decided to politicize the character. No longer is being proud of America a good thing, and no longer is he a symbol of hope. Now he's a symbol of perseverance in spite of America, not because of it anymore. Steve was all about fighting for the little guy, no matter how insignificant. It was always about fighting for others, for their country, for their freedom. But now it's all about the captain's struggles and his oppression. It's all about him now. This reeks of Disney politics, and it destroyed the whole ideology of what Captain America was supposed to be. They also decided to upgrade Sam to now have Ant-Man tech, a Black Panther suit, and vibranium wings on top of having his shield. Yet he's still a normal human underneath all those fancy new gadgets and toys. But that does not stop him from taking missiles right to his shield and suit and landing so hard it sends out a shockwave that would otherwise shatter every single bone in a human's body. And then of course he takes on the superhuman Red Hulk, but only for a bit, which we'll get to. So let's have a quick recap of what transpired in this brave new misfire. General Thaddeus Ross is now President Thaddeus Ross. Yes, 82-year-old Harrison Ford now is an age-appropriate president thanks to the last two administrations. He wants Sam to reassemble the Avengers, even though it is his Sokovia Accords that tore them apart.
I want you, Captain America, to help me rebuild the Avengers.
Anywho, at his inauguration, Isaiah Bradley, the old super soldier, attacks the president and tries to kill him. He was mind-controlled, but no one believes him, except Sam. Sam then goes in search of the person who mind-controlled Isaiah and conveniently finds him pretty quickly. Turns out it's the guy from the original Hulk movie from 2008. Remember him? Of course not. No one does. He looks awful and has apparently been planning his revenge for years now. Oh boy, revenge. Such an original idea. Through the film we'll learn that the super genius villain Samuel Stearns is an actual dumbass, with his ideas being figured out, overthrown or stopped constantly. I guess you need clever writers to write clever characters. Turns out that with the celestial corpse being full of adamantium, a lot of countries want it. It looks like it's mainly the US, France, India and Japan. Stearns tries to manipulate events to trigger some sort of war between Japan and the US, but luckily Sam is there to foil his dastardly plans. That in itself is pretty ridiculous. You'd think Japan would have learned its lesson by now. Also, a way more plausible country to have gone up against the US would have been China. But when you're Disney and you're trying to suck up to China for their money, you can't make them an antagonist, now can you? That's not very brave on Disney's part. At certain points, Sam has to fight some guns-for-hire goons like Copperhead and Sidewinder, who is supposedly the main bad guy. I genuinely like Giancarlo Esposito as an actor, but he is not an action star. So seeing a 67-year-old trying to keep up with Super Soldier Sam was just embarrassing. It went down even worse than the Gladiator 2 fight. What was also embarrassing was just how little screen time Giancarlo Sidewinder character actually got. Advertised as the main villain in theaters, he turned out to be just the merc thug. We also see Sam's apprentice, who's now the Falcon, every now and then. It genuinely feels like they went out of their way to make him the comedic sidekick in this movie. And it almost never works. This goofy clown shtick in a movie that tries to also take itself incredibly seriously is a huge tonal mismatch that makes no sense here. There's also some side story involving Ruth Bat-Seraph, the 5'0" actress who was supposedly a Black Widow operative. She fights guys that have to be more than double her size and easily beats them up, because of course she does. She has very little screen time. See what I did there?
She's hilarious.
And you can see that her story arc was dramatically cut. Why, you ask? Well, in the comics, she's the Israeli hero, Sabra. And with Disney politics, you can see why they cut her out of the movie as much as they could. That's not very brave, Disney. We then learn that the heart pills that President Roz has been taking were infused with some extra villainous ingredients, which ultimately turns him into the Red Hulk. He and Sam fight a bit, and then because the writers knew that there was no way Sam could realistically survive an actual fight with the Hulk, they have Sam be the Hulk Whisperer. Just like Natasha did to the Green Hulk. And he talks the Red Hulk down. Yeah, Sam talks his way out of the big fight all the trailers kept throwing in our faces. Either that, or they genuinely had no more budget left for destruction VFX and called it quits on the fight scene right there. And then the big bad villain just gives himself up to Sam.
Huh?
No resisting, fighting, no nothing. 2 underwhelming final confrontations in a row. No big third act CGI fight. Did they try to subvert expectations, or did they just run out of money and creativity? And then to make things even worse, the end credit scene is the villain telling Sam about the multiverse and that others are coming. No shit, Sherlock, the multiverse has been around for almost a decade now and people are tired of it. It's the thing that tore the neat little Marvel universe apart. The end. That's it. That's the story, if you want to call it that. This is by no means the worst product Marvel has pooped out. We'll always have the Marvels, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, Echo, Agatha, and She-Hulk to pick up that slack. That does not mean this is a good movie, though. It was butchered in the editing room, and the obvious tonal changes and story threads that just appear and disappear without a trace is a constant reminder of what a badly stitched together mess this is. I actually applaud the editors on this for getting this to make any sort of sense with how extensive all the constant reshoots were. The writing wasn't very strong and overall felt incredibly weak. It still holds true that you need good, clever writers to write clever, intriguing characters. This did not happen in this movie and is underwhelming in almost all aspects. Anthony Mackie is generally likable, but he crosses the insufferable line a few times during this movie, and there didn't seem to be any real chemistry between him and the new Falcon character. At this point, Harrison Ford is just phoning being old and not giving a shit anymore in as much as he can. Tim Blake Nelson is a really good actor, but this is another case of a good actor trapped in a terrible character. The idea of a super genius villain able to manipulate events from afar is an intriguing idea, but you need the writers to know what they're doing, otherwise you end up with this awful villain. A supposedly clever villain making constantly stupid and baffling decisions and fizzles out at the end of the movie as one of the MCU's worst ever. Marvel is really on a roll with pumping out the worst villains over the last few years. Even the action was generic MCU slop, and the VFX pretty meh. It all felt like it was an autopilot. Competent? Sure. But great? Not even close. The only outstanding part of this movie was how forcefully generic everything was. Generic mediocrity. Disney's cowardice also shone through with them constantly changing politics within the narrative and cutting characters to achieve that specific ideological Disney politics goal. Ultimately, there was nothing brave or new in this latest MCU outing. Is this something you should be spending expensive ticket prices on? No, absolutely not. This will be a fine Friday streaming movie a few months from now when you just want to start relaxing for the weekend. This film did not move the needle for the MCU and most certainly did not start any sort of revival or comeback for the once unstoppable box office juggernaut. It also shows that the MCU is still mostly rudderless, just floating around in cinematic space, not having a clue how to course correct this mess they find themselves in. Anywho, that's me signing off.